Yom Revi, we're holding now Parshas Beshalach, the fourth portion, Pasuk Chavav. Pasuk says, Vayemer Hashem el Moshe, Hashem said to Moshe, Neteis yodcha al hayam, stretch your hand over the sea. V'yeshuv hamayim al Mitzrayim, and let the water return upon the Egyptians. Al richbei v'al parashav, upon their chariots and upon their horsemen. Zog Rashi, v'yeshuv hamayim, sheskufen v'emdim kechema, that is standing upright like a wall. Yeshuv l'mkeim v'yichasu es Mitzrayim, return to its place and cover up the Egyptians. Chav Zayin. Vayed Moshe yod al hayam, Moshe stretched out his hands over the seas. Sea. Vayashav hayam lifneis beker l'yisonei, and towards morning the sea returned to its strength. U'mitzrayim nasan l'krosei, and the Egyptians were fleeing toward it. Vayina Hashem es Mitzrayim b'seich hayam, and Hashem stirred the Egyptians into the sea. Rashi says lifneis beker le'esh shabeker penin l'ovei, at the time the morning approaches. L'yisonei the takva arishain, the original strength, nasim the krosei, were fleeing towards it. Shahayu muhumamim umutrafim v'ratzim nikras hamayim, because they were confused and crazed and running towards the water. Vayina Hashem ka'adam sheminar sakdeda v'hefech ha'elyon l'mata v'tachtan l'mayla. As a person steers a pot of food and turns what is on top to the bottom and what's on the bottom to the top. Kachaya oilim v'yardim u'mishtabrim bayam, so were the Egyptians bobbing and up and down and being smashed into the sea. Hashem kept them alive to bear the torture. Vayinaher vishanik, which means v'lashon tiduf. It's an expression of steering b'lashon anami v'harba yesh b'mikra acher. Pasuk of Ches. Vayeshuv hamayim, and the waters returned. Vayichasu es harechev es haparos shim, and covered the chariots and the horsemen. The whole chil pari, the entire force of Pari. Haboy macharem bayom, coming after them into the sea. Lenisha behem ad echad, not even one of them survives. Rashi, Vayichasu es harechev the whole chil pari. Kachder kamikrois lichtev lamed yisera. So is the custom of the Torah to write a lamed. Melachol kelev tas necheshes v'chen lechol kliyam mishkan v'chol avidasev yisidesev v'misrayim v'misrayim v'chol kliyam v'ein ela tikkun lashon. It's only to enhance the language. But the Yidden went on dry land in the midst of the sea. The water was to them like a wall for their right and for their left. And on that day Hashem saved the Yidden miyad Mitzrayim from the hands of the Egyptians. And the Yidden saw the Egyptians dying on the seashores. Rashi, Shapolta hayam al svasei, for the sea spewed them out on the shore. Yisrael, so that the Yidden should not say, Kishem shanu eilim mitzad zeh, kachem eilim mitzad acher. Just as we are coming up from this side, they went out on the other side. Thank you. Rachik mimenu v'yirdu achareim, and they so they're far from us and they're pursuing us. Pasuk, pass the tissue, sorry. Thanks. Pasuk lamed aleph. Raya Yisrael siyad agdela. Yidden saw the great hand. Asher asa Hashem b'Mitzrayim, which Hashem had used upon the Egyptians. Vayira ha'am as Hashem. The people feared Hashem. Vayaminim ba'Hashem u'v'Moshe avdei, and they believed in Hashem and Moshe's servant. So Rashi, siyad agdela as siyad hagdela she'asa yadei shel Kadosh Baruch Hu, the great mighty deed that Hashem had performed. Many meanings fit the term yad, and all are expressions derived from the actual hand. And one who interprets it must adjust the wording according to the context. Pasuk Perek Tezvav Pasuk Aleph. Now we're going to go into Shiras Hayam. Then Moshe and the children of the Eden sang this song to Hashem. And they said, Ashir la Hashem ki go'oi go. I will sing to Hashem, for very exalted is He. Sus v'reich beidam bayam. A horse and its rider is he cast into the sea. Which means Oz Yasher, the future tense, means then he will sing. So Rashi explains, then when Moshe saw the miracle, it occurred to him to recite a song. Similarly, you find, and Yeshua spoke, which means so Yeshua spoke, and similarly in the house which he would make for Pare, his daughter, which means he decided to make it for her. Here too, Yasher in the future tense means that his heart dictated to him that he should sing a song. And he did. Yeshua as well, when he saw a Nes, it occurred to him to sing, like it says, V'yemer le'ene Yisrael. V'chein shir sabe'er shepasach bo az Yoshev Yisrael pirsh acharav ali ve'er anullah. You find this as well when it says, then Yidden sang, explains after, ascend, O well, sing to it. And it says that Shlomo built a high place. The Chachamim explained that he sought to build it, but did not build it. The Chachamim learn from here is an allusion from the Torah to Tchias HaMesim. Now, so it is with all the future tenses used, with all of them except that of Shlomo, which they explain it's implying he sought to build but did not build. Now Rashi says that you cannot say it and explain it a form like other words written in the future, which means that they occurred immediately. Like so would Eov do, or by the command of Hashem would they encamp, and sometimes the cloud would be, because this is an example of something that occurs continually. And either the future or the past is appropriate for it. But that which has occurred only once, the song that was sung, cannot be explained in this manner. Ki go'oi, go'oi, very exalted is he. Ki targumei, as the Targum says, davar acher, ba'akefa leimar, sha'asa davar she'ef she'lebasar dam lasis. So go'oi go'oi, to interpret it according to the Targum, he was exalted over the exalted, and the exalted is his. Davar acher, ba'akefa leimar, sha'asa davar she'ef she'lebasar dam lasis. Shenilchem mechaverim is gabar Allah, mapilim and asus, v'kan asus v'rich b'dam v'yam, chol she'ef shelasis, aydei zulasi, nefel b'loshen geis. Now others explain the doubling of the verb comes to say that he did something impossible for a flesh and blood person to do. When he fights with his fellow and overwhelms him, he throws him off the horse. But here, a horse and its rider, he cast into the sea with the rider still on the horse. Anything that cannot be done by anyone else is described as geos. Like it says, ki geos also. For he has performed an exalted act. Throughout the entire song, you will find the repetitive pattern. Another explanation. For he exalted beyond all songs. For however I will praise him, he still has more praise. Not like a human king who was praised for something he doesn't even possess. Both bound to one another, and the water lifted them up high and brought them down into the depths, and still they did not separate. Rama, what does it mean? Cast, hishlich, cast. And they were cast into the burning fiery furnace. The Medrash says, Kosav echad emer Rama. The Medrash states, one pasuk says Rama Vayam, Kosav echad emer Yara, and one pasuk says Yara Vayam, cast down. It teaches us that the horses and the rider went up and then descended into the deep, that were thrown up and down. Pasuk Beis, Ozi v'zimras Yah, Hashem's strength and his vengeance. Vayili Shur, my salvation. Ze'eli vanveo, this is my God, and I will make him a habitation. And Hashem my Father, I will ascribe to him exaltation. Onkelos Tirgum Tokfi v'tushpachti. Onkelos says, my strength and my praise. Ozi k'may Uzi. So Ozi is like Uzi, my strength. V'zimras k'may v'zimrasi. V'anitem maloshen amikra she'en lecha k'may v'nekuda b'mikra el b'shoshem mekemah shu samach itzel v'zimras. Chol sham mekemah is nokut shurak Hashem. Uzi elecha eshmera. Chen kol teva bashti oisis nekuda mila ofim k'shi ma'arechas b'eshtishis v'nashniya b'chatav. Hari she'en nekuda b'shurak again. Oiz Uzi roik ruki chayk chuki. Oil alo v'sarme alo. Ulo kol kule v'shalishim al kule. Ve'elu gim ozi v'simra shal kan v'shal yishaya v'shal tehillim nekule b'chatav kamatz v'ed ein b'echad mehem kosav v'simras ela v'zimras v'kul m'samach lahem ahilu yilishua. Kach ne'emer, therefore Rashi says, Liyash v'losh ne'mikra she'ein ozi kumei uzi v'zimras kumei v'zimrasi ela ozi shem davro. It's a noun. Kumei hayesh v'shemayim sheichni b'chag v'sela sheichni tzna so ha'shevach ozi v'simras yo hu hayelo yilishua. V'zimras dava kula tevas Hashem, kumei le'esos Hashem, ba'evras Hashem, al divras b'nei adam. Loshen v'zimras, loshen loy tizmer. Zmir aritzim, loshen ksuach ukrisa. Uzi v'tikimasar shal aleheinu hayel yeshua. Al tisma loshen vayihi, shalei nemer haya, shalanu mikrois, medam loshen zev, v'zedig masi. Eis kirs abayis, sav lehichlo davir, v'yaslei, saviv hayel lemer, asus slei saviv. V'chim diva yom, v'chimnei Yisrael, yeshim b'arei Yehuda. Vayim lechalem rechavim haylemer melach aleim rechavim v'bli yicheles v'yishchatam haylemer shchotam v'anoshim asher shalach Moshe v'yamusu mesu haylemer v'asher le'sam libe el dvar Hashem v'yazav haylemer ozav. Okay, long diktuk Rashi. Ze'eli b'chvei nigla aleim v'yamarim esim betzbei. He revealed himself in the glory to them, to the Yidden, and they pointed it with their finger. Ra shivcha layam asher le'ro neviim. It says that by the sea, even a maidservant perceived what the prophets did not perceive. Unklos is expression of Nava Shanun, a tranquil dwelling. Linvei Tzoin. Another explanation of Vanveo is an expression of beauty. I will tell of his beauty and his praise to those who enter the world. Is this one, and I will exalt him. I'm not the beginning of the sanctity. I'm not the first to recognize the sanctity, but the sanctity has been established, and he has remained with me. And his divinity has been upon me since the days of my forefathers. Gimel. Hashem ish mechama. Hashem is the master of the war. Hashem Shema. Hashem is his name. Rashi says, Hashem ish mechama bal mechamis. He's a man of war. Kamei ish nami, v'chol ish v'ishach mitrugumen baal, v'chein v'chazakta v'yisel ish l'giber. Hashem shemayim l'chamesav loy b'klizayin el b'shmehu nilchem. His wars are not waged with weapons, but his wages battle with his name. As he wages battle with his name, as David said to Goliath before fighting him, you come to me with spear, and I come to you with the name of Hashem when he fought Goliath when he was a teenager. Davrach, another explanation, Hashem Shemai, Hashem, his name, which means that even when he wages war and takes vengeance upon his enemy, he sticks to his behavior of having mercy on his creatures and nourishing all those who enter the world. Unlike the behavior of earthly kings, when an earthly king is engaged in war, he turns away from all the other affairs and does not have the ability to do both this, to wage the war and other things. Pare's chariots and his armies he cast into the sea, and the elite of his officers sank in the Reed Sea. Shti is an expression of casting. This is a noun. Tubu was tubu ain tfiya ela b'makom tit. Tfiya for sinking is used to only when referring to a place where there is mud. Kamei tavati b'vein metzula. I have sunk in muddy depths. Vayitva yirmiyo batit v'lamashana Nasa hayam tit teaches us that the sea became muddy. Ligmo lahem kimidasum sheshibu esisol bechem levenim, to recompensate them, the Egyptians, according to their behavior, namely that they enslaved the Eden with work that entails clay and bricks. Tahimus yichasumu, the depths cover them. Yardu mutzelis k'may oven, they descended into the depths like a stone. So Rashi yichasumu k'may yichasum. Ayudam tzelis yiseru, v'derech mikrais bekach, k'may v'tzainecha yirbuyin, yirbuyin mideshen b'secha. Ayud yishena shemash mashrum lashon as kach perushu. Tubu b'yamsuv, yishyachzu amayim v'yichasu esim. Yichasumu ein demel mikra b'kulasa v'darka liyis nakud yichasumu mala'ofum. My oven of Makam Acher Salalu Kaiferes, Makam Acher Yechlo Kakash, or Shem Kakash Hechem Tarfan Edim Yerdim Benim Kevin, Hashem Kafers. The solution is that most wicked were treated like straw, constantly tossed, rising and falling, the average ones like the stones, and the best like the lead, they sank immediately and thus were spared suffering. Pasik Vav, Yamincha Hashem, your right hand Hashem, Nadari Vakeach is most powerful, Yamincha Hashem Tiratz Eiv, your right hand Hashem crushes the foe. So Rashi Yimincha Shtei Pa'amim, twice. When the Yidden perform the will of Hashem, even the left hand becomes the right hand. Yimincha Hashem Nadari Bakeach. Your right hand is most powerful. Lahatzel as Yisrael Yimincha Hashem is Tiratz Eiv, to save the Yidden, and your second right hand crushes its foe. Seems to me, however, that the very right hand also crushes the foe. With unlike a human being who cannot perform two kinds of work with the same hand. Now, the simple meaning of the pasuk is your right hand, which is strengthened with might. What is your work? Your right hand, Hashem crushes the foe. Hashem Adari Hayud Yisera, Kway Rabasi Am Sarasi B'Medinais, Gnuvasi Yem, Tiras Eiv, Tamid Hire Etzes Meshaberes Eiv, constantly crushes and breaks the foe. V'Demilei V'Yeratzu V'Yeretzu Espnei Yisrael, and they crushed and they broke the children of Israel. Kavrachi Minchen Adari B'Keach Hi Meshaberes Malke, your right hand which is strengthened with might, it breaks and strikes the foe. And with your great pride, you tear down those who rise against you. You send forth your burning wrath that devours like straws. If the hand alone crushes the foe, then when it's raised with his great pride, it will definitely tear down those who rise against him. And if with his great pride alone, foes are torn down, how much more so when he sends upon them his burning wrath will consume. Taris, you tear down Tamid Ata Haters Kamecha Kom Negdecha, you always tear down those who rise up against you. Mihe Makom Kinegden, who are those that rise up against you? Elo Hakom Israel, these are the ones who rise up against the Eden. Cheno Emer Kine Vechi Emayun, Mahi Hehemel. What is that stirring? Al-Amcha Yarimu Said, against your people, they plot cunningly. For this reason, he calls them the enemies of Hashem. Pasik Ches, and with the breath of your nostrils, the waters were heaped up. Itzu Kamei Neid Nezlim, the running waters stood erect like a wall. Kofut Hemes Belev Yom, the depths congealed in the heart of the sea. Zagrashi, Ruach HaPecha Yetzim Mishnei, Yechir and Shalaf, breath which comes out of the two nostrils of the nose. The Torah speaks about the Shechina in a model of immortal king, in order to enable the ears of the people to hear it, to understand Hashem's anger. It's like a person who gets angry, that he has like wind comes out of his nostrils. Smoke went up from his nostrils. And from the wind of his nostrils they will be destroyed. For the sake of my name, I defer my anger. This means that when a person's anger subsides, his breath becomes longer, and when he becomes angry, his breath becomes shorter. Echtim kamei ne'ekod b'chitim masel Shabbos. Kach nir b'inei. Chachar and af shemikra ani emer ken. Chara af kamei ba'atzmi. Chara mini cherev lashon sreifa make it. So every time there's expression chara af, anger was kindled. It's an expression of fire and burning. Lashon sreifa make it. Shanichirim ischamim v'necharim be'is ha'ketzef. The nostrils heat up and burn at the time of anger. Charei megizos chara kamei rotzin megizos ritzei. V'chin chema lashon chamimus. Alkin hu emer v'chamasa bar avay. And when the anger subsides, we say, what do we say in the Skaradite, his mind cooled off. Never mind, unclis tirgam lashon armimus. Unclis teaches us up an expression of cunning. Lashon tzachas amikra kamei aremes chitim. V'nitzvu kamei neid yichiach. Now, however, he says an expression of a stack of wheat, and the phrase that follows, the running water stood erect like the wall proves it. From the heat of the wind that came out of your nose, like the water dried up and it becomes like piles and heaps of grain stacks, which are very tall. Like a wall. An expression of heaping, gathering. A heap of harvest, the day of sickness. Kenes kaneid, a mound kaneid. Loi kos of kenes kaned ela kaneid. It's not say he brings it as a flask, but kaneid were the same as kanoid. Really, kaneid kumei kaneid v'kol loshnach nazoy lelichtiv machnes kivnei me'ayam ela kenes loshen esev etzeverhu. V'chein kamen in nes v'yamdu nes echad v'ein loshen kima v'amidav kenes ala b'chaimes v'tziburim v'lemasinu na'id nakod ala b'muvuvim kumei simim v'timasa b'necha v'esneid achalev. Expression of rising standing is not applied to flats but to walls and heaps. Kafu kumei v'chagvina takpieno and curdle me like cheese. Shehuksha v'nasa ka'avonim v'amayim zerkim v'samitzrim ala even b'kech v'necham v'chol mini keshi and they, the depths harden and become like stones, and the water hurled the Egyptians against the stone with all its might and fought with them with all kinds of harshness. Belev yam b'chezik yam, the strongness. V'derech ha'mikris, the davar kin, ha'lev ha'shamayim, belev ha'ela loshen, ikora v'takva shadavar, expression denoting the root and the strength of anything. Amar oyev, because the enemy said, erdef asik achalak shalo, I will pursue, I will overtake. Tim le'ima nafshi, I will shear my booty. Orik charbi, my desire will be filled from them. To the shem yodu, I will draw my sword, my hand will impoverish them. Zogashi amrayev la'amai, to his people. Kishapitam bidvarim, when he entices them with his words. Erdei fasigam achalik shalom sari avadei, I will pursue, I will overtake them, I will share the plunder with my officers and my servants. Timleim tismalim bahem, will be filled with them. Nafshi ruchi uritzeni, my soul, my spirit. Val tismal tevam edebers b'shtayim, do not surprise at one word speaking of two words. Timalu mahem yeshna harba v'loshen ki eretz ha'negev nasati k'mi nasati lui v'yachol dabra l'shalom k'mei dabra imi b'ni yitzuni k'mei yotzu menu mispar tzadi agene k'mei agidlei afkan timalaimu timalai nafshi. Here also timalaimu means timali nafshi mehem. Ari charbi esh leif, I will empty my sword. Val shem shu meirik es atar mishlevos v'nisharek nefu b'loshen ha'akara haraka and I will draw, because one empties the sheath of drawing the sword and it remains empty. An expression of emptying is appropriate. The Shema Lashon, the shoes vidalus, an expression of poverty and destitution. K'mei meirish u'ma'asher. Yud nashaft v'rucha kisamu yam. You blew with your wind, the sea covered them. Tzalalo kaiferes, they sank like lead. B'mayim adidim, in the powerful waters. Rashi nashafta lashon hafacha, expression of blowing. V'chein gam nashu b'hem tzalu shiku amku. An expression of deep, kaiferes avar, like a plum in French. Okay, we're almost done. Pasuk Yudal, Micha Mecha B'Elam Hashem, who is like you amongst the powerful Hashem? Micha Mecha Neder B'Kerish, who is like you powerful in the holy place? Neir Sehila Sefelas, too awesome for praises performed wonders. Rashi Beilim Bechazakim, amongst the strong. Ves Elia Aris Lakach Ayolas Ilazras Yichusha, the powerful in the land, he took away my strength, hastened to my assistance. Neir Sehilas Yaru Melahagid Tilesecha Penyimatu, you are too awesome for one to recite your praises. Silence is praise to you. Natisi Yimincha, you inclined your right hand to the Ema Aretz, the earth swallowed them up. Zagash Natisi Yimincha, Kashakash Baruch Hu, Meita Yadai, Arishem Kolam Enoflim. When the Abishter inclines his hand, the wicked perish and fall. Because all are placed in his hands and they fall when he inclines it. And Hashem shall turn his hands, and the helper shall stumble, and helped one shall fall. Mashal Lekli, Schuchis and Asunim Biad Adam. This can be compared to a glass vessel placed in a person's hand. If he inclines his little hand, they fall and break. So from here we learn that they merited to be buried as a reward for saying Hashem is the righteous one. This is one of the longest Chumash. Nechisa, hard Rashis and hard words. Nechisa v'chazdach amzu ga'alta, with your loving kindness you led the people. You led the people, you redeemed, you led them with your might to your holy abode. So Rashi Lashon Menal is an expression of leading. Mungla is Tikkun Lashon Nesif, a seva, an expression of carrying and bearing. The Dikta Lufashah Lashon Ivris, he is not exact and explained in accordance with Hebrew. Pasuk Gidal, Shamu Am Yirgazin, people heard, they trembled. Achil Achaz, a shudder seized. Yeshu Plushas, and the inhabitants of Plushas. Rashi Yirgazin, Mitzragzin, they trembled. Yeshu Plushas, Mnesha Hargos Bnei Ephraim, since they slew the children of Ephraim, Shemiru, Saket, Vyotzu, Bechoska, Kumfurish, B'divrei Yamim, who hastened the end of their exile and went out of Egypt forcibly. Hargum Anshe Gas, and the people of the town, Gas slew the children of Ephraim. Pasik Tesvav Oz Nivalu Aluf Edom, then the chiefs of Edom were startled. Eli Moav, as for the powerful men of Moav, Yachsim Ra'ad, trembling seized them, and Amegul Kayish Canaan, all the inhabitants of Canaan melted. So Gash Aluf Edom Eli Moav, Valehoyalahem Lirei Klum, now they had nothing to fear at all. Because they, the Yidden, were not advancing upon them. Rather, they trembled because of grief, that they were grieving and suffering because of the glory of the Yidden. Namegu Namasu is an expression, with raindrops you dissolve it. Amra Aleinu Heim Baim, the inhabitants of Canaan said they are coming upon us. To annihilate them and possess our land. Tipul aleihem masay, may dread and fright fall upon them. With the armor of your greatness, may they become as still as stone. Until your people cross over. To the nations that you have acquired crosses over. The distant ones. On the nearby ones. For you have heard how Hashem dried up the waters of the Red Sea. You loved more than other nations. Similar to an article purchased for a high price, which is dear to the person who purchased it. You shall bring them, and you shall plant them on the mountain of your inheritance, directed towards your habitation, which Hashem, O Hashem, Mikdash Hashem, the sanctuary, O Hashem, which your hands founded. Zagashi, Moshe prophesies that he will not enter the land of Eretz Yisrael, therefore it does not say, you shall bring us. The temple below is directly opposite the temple above which you made. The cantillation sign over the Zakah Gadol. So the pasuk says the temple is beloved since Shalom Nivra B'Yad Achas. Shneimar Af Yad Yasta Aretz Midrash B'Shnei Yadayim Ve'emes Yibana B'Shnei Yadayim B'Zman Shashem Yimlech Le'Levad. When will that be? La'as Lava Yishkol Amlucha Shalai. This will be when Mashiach comes. Hashem Yimlech Le'Levad. Hashem will reign for all eternity. Zagashi Lashon Elam Yisuv V'Avav B'Yisei Lefika Chipchusav Anecha Yidei V'Ed Shavav B'Yishimish K'mutzehi. This is an expression of eternity. When Pari's horses came with the chariots and his horsemen in the sea, and Hashem brought the waters of the sea back upon them, the Yidden walked upon dry land in the midst of the sea. Zagashi Kashir Ba, when they came. Miriam the prophetess, Aaron's sister, took a tambourine in her hand, and all the women came after her with tambourines and with dances. Rashi, where did she prophesy? When she was Aaron's brother before Moshe was born. She said, my mother is going to destine to bear a son who will save the Eden. Aaron's sister, since Aaron risks his life for when she was afflicted with tzaras, she is called by his name. As Atev Kli Shel Mini Zemer, a type of musical instrument. The righteous women of that generation were certain that the Eibishter would perform miracles for them, and they took the tambourines out of Mitzrayim. Miriam called out to them, and she said, Shir Hashem ki go goy, sing to Hashem, for very exalted is he. Sus v'reich b'ram v'yom, a horse and his rider he cast into the sea. Rashi Moshe Amar Shir la'anashim. Moshe said the song to the men, Hu Emer v'hinam acharav, and they answered him after. And Miriam Amar Shir la'anashim, and Miriam sang the song to the woman, and they repeated after her. Pasech of Beis, Vayasa Moshe Espenei Yisrael b'Yamsuf. Moshe led the Eden away from the Yamsuf. Yetzu midbar Shur, and they went into the desert of Shur. They walked for 3 days in the desert, but they did not find water. Rashi Yisim Bal Karcham. He had to force them to travel. She'itim Mitzrayim Esusim B'Tachshit Tezov. The Kesav Adam Tevis Vayisrael Mitzim Eisim Yom. Udelo Yisib Yisrael Yom Bizis Mitzrayim. Shneimer Teri Zov Anasa Lach Im Nekudas HaKesav. The Fikach Chutzal Asim Bal Karcham. He led them away against their will, for the Egyptians had adorned their horses with gold and silver and precious stones, and the Yidden were finding them in the sea. The plunder of the sea was greater than the plunder of Egypt, as it says, we will make you rows of gold and studs of silver. Therefore, you had to lead them against their will. Pasech Chav Gimel. They came to Marasa. They were not able to drink the water from Mara, because it was very bitter. That's why it was called Mara. Zagrashi. Hey hanisrefes b'tefes mara, hanishreshes b'tefes mara, ubes michazek shinidbekas lahik shu meisim makam alamed, tapech ahei v'shal sheresh l'tav v'chein kol hei shi sheresh b'tav t'sapech l'tav b'smichasa, kamei chemes enli v'chamasa baravei harihi shal sheresh nepechas l'tav m'pnei shenismechas, halavam v'nesefes v'chein eved v'ama hine amasi bila l'nefesh chaya, v'zi amasa chiyasa lahem, bein harama shuvasa haramasa. The people complain against Moshe, saying, what shall we drink? Ma'anishta, what should we drink? This is an expression of nifel. So he cried out to Hashem, Hashem ate, and Hashem instructed him concerning a piece of wood. They should cast it into the water, and the water became sweet. So there he gave them a statute, an ordinance, and there he tested them. He gave them over their Shabbos and Paradum and the Dinin. He tested them, and the people saw how stiff-necked they were. But they complained. Pasuk of Zayin, Vayemer im Shamayt Yishmelech Hashem Melekech Vayosher Beinav Ta'asav Azant L'mitzvah Yisrael V'Shamayt Kol Cholgu Kol Machal Shesant Mitzrayim V'Osam Melecha Ki Ani Hashem Leifech. And he said, if you listen to Hashem's voice and you do what's proper in His eyes and you listen closely to His commandments and observe His statutes, all the sickness that I visited upon the Egyptians I will not visit upon you. For Hashem, your Hashem heal you. So this is the acceptance that they should accept upon themselves. Tasi Asuya. This means the performance of the commandment. V'Azanta Tata Aznayim L'Daktik Behem. That you should incline your ears to be meticulous in fulfilling them. Zagrashi kol chukov, all the statutes, devarim she'enim elam exist hamelech. These are things that are the decree of the king. B'lishu tam, there's no reason. V'yetzahara mekantra aleim, and the evil Yetzahara, he makes fun of it. What's the problem with all these things? Last Rashi, I will not visit you. And if I do bring sickness upon you, it is as if they have not been brought. He says, and I will teach you the Torah and the mitzvahs in order that you be saved from them. It's like a doctor says, Do not eat things that will cause you to relapse in the grip of illness. This warning refers to listening closely to Hashem, and so